So hi everybody, thanks for the invitation to this fifth edition of the DGC MENA. My name is Kofi. I'm the co-founder of the 360 game agency Gamecampcities, the strategic Africa partner of the DGC. Welcome in this fire chat with New York and with origin from Nigeria, Dele Atanda. And today we will talk about a very interesting topic about the transversality of the video game industry. When we talk about transversality, we want to understand that all the different segments of the creative industries are connected in just one industry, like the video game industry. And we will see how we can move from a media to another one and create an ecosystem. So Dele, you are there with us today. Please, can you introduce to us your company?
Hi everyone, yeah, I'm Atanda. I'm CEO of Metaiye Media. We're a blockchain media company and we create new types of media assets using blockchain to create media that people can own. Working on a particular franchise called Metaiye Nights, which is a new superhero franchise, which is geared towards telling stories from an African-centric perspective. It involves African heroes and African heroes of African descent who really really sort of defining a role in terms of the future of technology and telling the future of the way that the whole sort of tech landscape is evolving, told from an African perspective.
Okay, perfect. So right now, if I need to understand your concept, because at the beginning you are a blockchain technology, how you can explain very simple to the audience there everywhere in the world, what is the concept of blockchain technology?
I mean, the way I usually describe this is blockchain technology is really like the next evolution of the internet. It's really, it takes a lot of the principles that were used to create the internet in the first place that have been lost along the way, around and bringing them back, around decentralization, around autonomy, around sovereignty, around empowering people through their information, and really ushering this new sort of platform perspective where we can have a lot more control, a lot more independence, and a lot more autonomy as individuals.
Perfect. So regarding this kind of technology, we will try to make a jump of the reality that we know right now. For example, the reality of comics, because you talk about a superhero. We will try to get into this media, just to remember to our audience that this is, for example, today a comic book or a collector book. Right now you have the collector book of the franchise Overwatch, which is an esport game. There you have, for example, the franchise of Deus Ex, which is a game with also an ambitious scenario and a comics. So right now, I want that you explain to the audience which is the big difference between your comics, Metaiye, and this traditional media that we know so far, regarding also the aspect of the blockchain technologies and the digital media.
Sure. So why don't I go through my presentation and I'll answer a lot of those questions, and then when I finished it, perhaps we can revisit and see what questions still remain. But I think a lot of those answers will come through as we get into that.
Okay, perfect. So I think that without take too long time, we will jump about this presentation, and I wish to our audience to learn a lot about this this content. Here we go.
Okay, so yeah, and I think what I'm going to touch on, I'm going to start from the perspective of transmedia, and then talk specifically around what this means from a blockchain-enabled media perspective, and then specifically what we're doing with Metaiye Nights and powered by Metaiye, effectively.
Perfect.
So I guess like this is I think is a great place to start. So, you know, it was announced last week that Travis Scott, the big hip hop artist, grossed about 20 million from appearing in a concert within Fortnite. So we all know Fortnite's like one of the biggest blockbuster games out there. And, you know, let's put that in perspective. So 20 million in a single concert within Fortnite, compared with his real world tour, where he generated on average, well, actually the highest grossing performance was 1.7 million or rather for a single night. And the total tour for the whole year generated 53.5 million. So it's that in that context, you see the power of his performance in Fortnite, of grossing, you know, close to half of what he achieved for a whole year in a single performance there. So this starts to show us that there are advantages to performing in cyberspace. Cyberspace brings us abilities to bring people together from all over the world into a single space to be able to do, to get the kind of audience and the kind of participation that's impossible to get in a physical space. I think, yeah, and I think that's really important in terms of to show the future and the potential here. And this is where it gets really interesting when we start to look at things that we can do within these cyber spaces that are not possible to do within the physical space.
Yeah.
So that's a really good starting sort of context. Now, when we talk about, this is another example that I wanted to touch on. So this is a project that has been launched this year by Draper Labs, who are famous for having created CryptoKitties, which is it's the first sort of blockchain-based non-fungible token game context. And what's really interesting about this is that what's happened here is that Draper Labs have created these collectible cards. And they effectively are cards. They're sort of like baseball cards of the 21st century. And what you could see in this particular one here was that they're capturing these moments and creating, which are just video footage of top shots from famous basketball athletes. But these now are collectible items. So you can see this, but this is just an example of one that I pulled out here with Dennis Smith Jr. And these are being sold for $99 to $15,000. So there is a specific amount of them that are made available, and the user can buy them and own them and trade them. And they've created a marketplace within their platform that people can own those through as well. Now, one of the things that's really important in this context is that these assets are ownable and the user can own them outside of the gaming platform. And this is very different from something like Fortnite. Because if you look at something like Fortnite, you know, people spend, I think it's like on the last in 2019, it was like 2.4 billion that was generated within Fortnite, which is primarily around the buying and selling of in-game assets. But the problem is that people don't actually own those assets. Those assets remain with the platform. And if for any reason the platform were to shut down or whatever, then all of that time and money that people have invested in creating those assets essentially disappears.
Exactly.
You know, there's a famous story that Vitalik Buterin, who set up the Ethereum platform, which is the second largest blockchain or cryptocurrency out there, was inspired to do that because he lost a huge amount of assets that he had created in World of Warcraft when there was a change in the platform. And this is something that typically happens with games because these platforms don't live indefinitely. They have their moment in the sun and then they disappear. And the problem is that all of this value and effort and time that has been created by the community into these platforms and into the assets with them disappears when the platforms go. And that's what's different about using blockchain to enable this, that you can actually start to create these assets that live independently of the game. And even we're getting to a stage now where some of these assets can actually be transferred and used between games, between different gaming platforms and environments. So, you know, I think when you look at this, sorry, I've got to just move this thing, it's blocking my screen. Bear with me a moment. Right, so let me just bear with me a second. I just need to move this Zoom thing. Let me just do this for a second. There we go. That's better. In fact, I'm just going to do this so I don't have to see myself at all. Right, so yeah, so with Top Shot, the power of it is that it's fully licensed by the NBA. Directly. So the NBA is in partnership with Draper Labs, issues these. So they verify that these collectible items are actually genuine, and it's already generated 2 million in private beta sales before the platforms has actually launched. So this is another example of this. Now, you know, this is by a company called Blockade Games, and they've actually created this blockchain-based gaming platform. And, you know, looking at these graphics, you might say, well, okay, this is pretty rudimentary visuals. And that's true. But, you know, you have to kind of put that aside for a second, because the key underpinning here is that all of the items that are created in this game can be owned. And in many ways, this, in fact, the key item that's showing here, one of the things that brought Blockade Games significant fame with this is that when they launched this, they launched this platform, and they created an open source platform for others to use to build different worlds and different environments based on their protocol. But that particular asset as well was sold for $25,000. So, you know, you start to get to serious money that's being used. But the key thing is that if Neon District, this particular game, were to disappear, the people who have invested all this time in creating these assets and creating these in-game items would still own those and would still be able to use them and trade them on secondary markets as they go. So you start to get to this thing about vintage collectibles, for example. And to take that to the nth degree, this is another great example of a virtual Formula One card by Delta Time. And this particular one, which is one of a kind, it's a one-off, was sold for $100,000.
Wow.
So, you know, you're talking about serious numbers in this regard. And because we can use blockchain to create this digital scarcity, this starts to become really viable. And, you know, the market has responded with the demand for these items in this kind of way. So we really are at the dawn of a new type of gaming infrastructure and a gaming platform. And that's really what is really the vision and dream behind Metaiye Media, where on one hand, we're looking at how do we actually tell new types of stories and have a new sort of creative in terms of storytelling process. Within Metaiye Media, with our, as I say, our primary franchise is Metaiye Nights, and but it's also a new way of distributing media, a new type of media in itself, and a new way of distributing that media. So I'm going to play you a very short video just to sort of explain a little bit about what Metaiye Nights is actually doing.
Well, Metaiye Nights Media, a blockchain media company, announcing the release of its Meta Nights. That's a cryptographic digital comic series.
So it's set in this world called Digiterra,
which is like a digital world that mirrors the physical world. And in that world, there are cyber vampires who suck people's data.
Like,
and that's not accidental.
Facebook, Apple. Okay.
It's not accidental.
MENA isn't just a graphic novel. It's a portal to the shifting future of your digital life, where extended reality and gaming meet the physical world.
One of the things we're doing with Metaiye Nights is we're releasing it with a wallet whereby, you know, when people sign up, they will have a self-sovereign ID.
Anything you can imagine on a playing card can be created as a digital collectible and saved in your personal media wallet.
So the idea of creating a comics series where the issues are published as non-fungible tokens is really exciting because it means that we can create collectible digital artifacts that can grow value over time. Crypto actually allows us to own these assets independently of the platform.
It only takes a few minutes to purchase MENA shares on startengine.com. You can own a stake in MENA and the future of digital collectibles.
So that just gives you a little bit of a taste. And I will say, you know, we launched this campaign, which is very much a part of the whole crypto culture about involving the crowd and bringing the crowd in. So we launched this and we've launched a campaign on Start Engine where people can buy equity in the company. And we've raised over $400,000 in that campaign already. By giving people an opportunity to come in and become part owners of the platform. What is it that we mean when we say the world's first crypto comic, and what does that
Good question, exactly. I read that.
So I guess the first thing is that we've created a comic series where the issues, we can do limited editions, special edition versions that are digitally scarce. And this is that goes back to this blockchain aspect that we can create a limited edition volume of particular assets. And the other thing that's really important about that is that this blockchain technology enables us to make these assets in a way that they are unforgeable. They cannot be replicated like a Bitcoin in that sense. It's, you can't just duplicate it. Which has always been a big problem with digital media, you know.
Exactly.
You know, since Napster really revolutionized the whole music industry, that it revolutionized it because once media was created digitally, it was easy to replicate. But blockchain gives us a way to actually be able to control the scarcity and prevent counterfeit, forgery, or duplication of these media without consent. And because you then have these assets that are scarce and unforgeable, that lends them to being collectible in the sense that this means that people, because of the scarcity and because of this unforgeability, these assets can accrue value over time according to demand and rareness, etc. But it's not just, you know, that's kind of one half of the story. One half of the story is about the crypto comic and its scarcity and unforgeability. The other thing that we're doing with Metaiye Nights is we're introducing the world's first crypto media wallet, which becomes this place where you can store these assets that you buy or use or earn through games and then trade or have or share. And the key thing about this is that it's self-sovereign, meaning that once you have the wallet, that you have complete control over it, you have complete control about what you do with those assets and where you choose to use them. And in that sense, you can then exchange them, or in fact, what we're doing with Metaiye Nights is we're also having a provision where people can lend them to other people, kind of like you would have done with physical comics or physical assets. You know, once you buy a record or a comic or a book, like the books that you were showing me earlier, or showing us all earlier, those are your property. And you decide you want to give them to your friend, to your son, to anyone that you want, which hasn't been the case with digital media in the past.
Exactly.
And the key thing here again is that this all happens in a publisher and platform agnostic manner. So regardless of what happens to Metaiye Media, even if the Metaiye Nights franchise were to die at some point, you would still own those assets and they would still be able to accrue value based on market dynamics, based on the demand and supply of them and the number of them that's in circulation, etc. So that's really the central idea behind it. But beyond that as well, with Metaiye Nights as well, we started this project in parallel with other initiatives that we've been doing around data sovereignty, data ownership. And so for us, a real key part of this is around digital literacy and digital and financial literacy. And we're working with the Digital Intelligence Institute, which was spun out of the World Economic Forum, to use the comics as a way of driving more digital and financial literacy, particularly among minority or Black and brown communities, particularly where certainly in the West, where a lot of these communities are disenfranchised from the tech industry, from the digital industry, from the financial industry. So diversity inclusion really is a key part of our raison d'etre, as it were. And our story is told from an African perspective for our heroes of our African descent, but it's very inclusive. We have a very inclusive cast of characters from all walks of the planet. And then finally, we partnered with our sister NGO, the Internet Foundation, which has this declared mission of getting 1 billion people self-sovereign by the year 2030, in line with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 16.9, providing identity to all. So this is sort of the bigger macro vision behind what it is that we're trying to achieve with Metaiye Nights, and really kind of telling the story around why sovereignty is important, why we need to have control of our information, and why we need to be able to control our assets in a way that people can connect with emotionally. And the last thing that I wanted to just do was actually make a world premiere here today.
Great. We like that.
So, we have
a BGC, we like this kind of things. World premiere.
I thought you might like this. So we've been developing this series for a while, and we've developed the first sort of pilot episodes of the series as comics, as still comics. But the next stage has been developing a series of motion comics.
Interesting.
These motion comics then start to become these non-fungible assets as well. So for example, one of the things that we will do is give, limited editions where you can have the still comic, the motion comic, with limited editions with signed by the artists, signed by the writers, as well as back information. So I'm going to show you, for the first time seen anywhere in the world, the first sneak peek of the motion comic series, which we will be releasing probably just before the holidays. So some news will be coming about that soon, but it will be coming with the wallet to around the world at the beginning of the year. So here we go.
Perfect.
There you have it.
That's it. That's it. That's it. Very, very, very rich presentation, Dele. Thanks for that. For showing us for your world premiere interaction, motion comics. I think that is a lot of interesting stuff that you show so far. And yes, we try to continue this great debate about comics, cryptocurrency, new platform of distribution. But before that, just a question. Do you have in the pipeline production a project about video games for these comics?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's another thing that we're working on, and I can't announce who we're working with yet. We've been working with them for all of this year, developing concepts, and we actually have a production team out of Africa that we're working with, and we will be launching a video game associated with the comic series in the first quarter of next year. It's sort of like second quarter, actually, by the end of the first quarter, early second.
Exactly. We know. Yes, we know that the COVID jeopardized many planning of everything. So for sure that we need to have that. Another question about inclusion. You know that NEOM is our headline sponsor. Is a big project about a smart city, great vision in the region of the Red Sea near the Egypt. How do you think that this kind of technology can give a glimpse of the future of this smart city, which is in building right now?
Yeah, I mean, smart city, it's something I followed. I used to head up digital for automotive, aerospace, and defense for IBM, and I work around smart cars and smart cities. And actually did some work in Dubai, actually, around smart cities as well. I used to do some work with Do, who was one of my clients, the mobile provider out there. So yes, this is, I think this is the really important thing that's happening with the technology now. It's what the internet is leaving our machines and coming out to the world around us. Exactly. So, smart cities are obviously very closely integrated with IoT, the Internet of Things. And there are a couple of things that are really important about smart cities. Firstly, we're going to have vastly more data than we can imagine. If you look at, and this is a really important point, because when you look at virtual reality, for example, this is a massive generator of data. And that data can be used in malicious as well as benevolent ways. And that's going to just extend into the real world more. It's what I call the webbed wide world, opposed to the world wide west, which the web is today now. So it's really important for places like NEOM to really get the right foundation in terms of the principles of sovereignty, of citizenship, of autonomy, of person centricity as we go into these smart cities. So I think that these games and these environments, obviously they give us ways to prototype and pilot all of these ideas that are in these smart cities. But the reality is that, these smart cities in themselves, and NEOM will be a fantastic example, where you have this digital world living in close parallel with the physical world. Exactly. And they will overlay each other in many ways. So I think that's what these technologies and what these gaming sort of concepts are incubating, a closer relation, a much tighter coupling between the digital world and the physical world.
Exactly. Great point. So regarding inclusion and diversity. So what is, for example, your vision about integrating all the aspects of Africa? Because we know that Africa is not just West Africa, it's West Africa, East Africa, South Africa, and also the North Africa. And we know that the North Africa is part of the MENA region. So this is the bridge between the two regions. So it means that when, for example, African will develop a product, we need to be sure that this product includes all the aspect of the full region of the Africa. So regarding, for example, the language barrier, do you think that, for example, Metaiye can have in the future an Arabic version, or we can have a superhero from Arabic region? Because when we look already closely of all the ecosystem about superhero, so far, yes, we have a lack a black superhero. We have a lack of Arab superhero. We have a lack also of Indian superhero. And in fact, all of these superhero are just Western of American superhero, that's the fact.
Yeah.
So what is your vision, your perspective about push the convo and push the impact in this situation?
Yeah, no, it's a really important point. I mean, of course, so within our story, we do have an Arabic superhero as part of,
okay.
There's one of the characters in our story is from the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
And we have Asian, you know, one of the key characters is Satoshi, who's that. So we have a very deliberate approach in writing this story to include these characters in it. But also it's very important that we are writing, so we are working with African production teams, in terms of the comic production and the gaming development, so that we can tell these stories in a way that is aligned with our culture as Africans and as people of color of the world.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
And I think this is really critical. So there are two things that I think are really important here. One is that this isn't just about storytelling. This is actually about writing a place for ourselves in the future.
Exactly.
Because that's the problem with all of this at the moment, is that you look at a lot of these science fiction stories and a lot of these depictions, and it just continues the status quo, where we are on the fringe, we have these fringe roles, and, you know, the dominant culture is Western culture. And that's not the world that's not the future that we want. And it's not the future that's realistic. So I think it's really important to be active now. You know, the future is created today. And writing these stories in a way that is and I think also it's not just about writing the stories in a way that includes those characters. It's including people from diverse backgrounds in creating the stories in the first place.
Exactly. Yes, sir.
You know, and the last thing I'll say on this, which I think is really important as well, is that it's all about culture. And, you know, I think we're entering this stage now as we go into this more digital, quantum digital reality, as I like to call it, whereby, you know, we're able to organize ourselves as people for the first time in history, not based on blood or land, but based on ideas. So it's really, you know, one of the key things that we're trying to achieve with Metaiye Nights is to create this global culture. We call it this human culture, whereby people who share these ideas, these progressive ideas of fellowship, of community, of inclusion, we can all create infrastructures that we can use to protect these ideas and protect this culture that we build as a global community.
Exactly. Just another question regarding the sector of brands, agencies, and media. You know, at ETP Media, we are a media company, and we work with different media, digital, print, campaign events. And sometimes I think about what will be the future regarding all these kind of blockchain technologies, cryptocurrency technologies. Are we really ready and aware of the next wave which are coming? And the fact is, today I want to know, for example, what from your perspective will be the case of ownership campaign from an agency. So imagine today I want to create a campaign about a product, and 1 month after the campaign is finished, but the collectible of the campaign is always alive, and you can duplicate them or share them or modify them for other purpose. Do you think that blockchain can reach us to this kind of thinking in the future?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think we basically have a new canvas that is being
blank page.
And it's going to take a while for the creative, you know, and that's one of the reasons, again, we started Metaiye Nights. When you look at blockchain, it's dominated by technologists and engineers, and it's all logic and, you know, logos and deep sort of tech. But we're at the stage now where we need to start to bring new creative ideas here. And it is still very early days, you know. It's like when the television first arrived, you know, when the television first arrived, you had these still pictures that were frozen on the screen, and people were basically just using it like radio. They were just using it like radio with a still image, because nobody had really understood that, well, actually you can have moving images and audio all together combined, and you can tell whole kinds of different stories. You can tell stories in different ways.
Yeah.
And, you know, and of course, there's always going to be news and information, but certainly when it comes to the issue of storytelling, that's perhaps where we excel most in our creative capabilities as a species. So I think you know, when it comes to the entire creative landscape, whether it's marketing, advertising, music, film, storytelling, theater, etc., all of this, we have a new canvas now. This technology to create new types of campaigns, new types of creative, with new economic models that underpin them, new distribution models that underpin them. So yes, I think that, you know, it's probably going to be the next generation that are really going to excel and take these technologies and take this canvas and create, and new sort of creatives will emerge from them. But again, this is really important, why we have to have a very inclusive framework, because no one has a monopoly on the future.
Yeah, for sure.
Monopoly on ideas. So what we really need to do is just inspire people to go and be confident out there and to create new creations accordingly.
Exactly. So far we completely travel in the space, talking about different segments, different media. And my last question will be for you. I read that on the news that you work on an application for the COVID right now. And I'm figuring to see if we can have this relationship from the beginning, a comics, a video games, a digital asset can have an impact in a health hub, for example. So what will be this kind of scenario when I read the comics, I learn certain things about the disease, and from these comics, I can generate a little money of digital asset that I can use, for example, for biomedicals. What is kind of future you can imagine from that?
Well, without giving too much of the game away, you've done your research, I'm impressed. But actually, that's at the heart of what we're exploring with the gaming. So that's one of the reasons that we've taken a bit of time to look at gaming, because essentially, you're right, we have this health app that's around looking at COVID monitoring, and we obviously have the comic series. And what we're trying to do, and we're still incubating and doing user research, customer research, to figure out how people respond to it. But the idea is that two things that we want to do with gaming. First thing is, you know, we need to mobilize young people in this fight against the pandemic.
The youth,
And we believe that if we can incentivize young people through gaming, if we can gamify, you know, the ability for people to monitor themselves. So our health app basically allows people to do a scan of themselves just by looking into their phone's camera, and it can give them an idea of their vitals. The key thing being it can measure their oxygen saturation levels.
Interesting.
And if their oxygen saturation levels go low, that's a very high indicator that they have COVID. And even if they've been diagnosed as COVID positive, you know, if your oxygen saturation goes low, then it's a very high, good indicator as to the state of your health. So in this sense, and we generate this health pass, this credential, which includes like whether you've taken a vaccine or not, and you can share that. Now, one of the problems is that nobody wants to share data at the moment. Everyone's scared about privacy and who's getting this data, what are they going to use it for? So, you know, our whole mission as a kind of group has always been about data privacy, data sovereignty, data ownership. So we give all the protections around people's data within our health app. But what we want to do is use gaming to reward people for sharing that information and to gamify the discovery of true information and the debunking of fake information around it. So we've got a lot, we're in a lot of conversations at the moment with AI partners, with blockchain partners to be able to pull all of this together. So that's going to be, it's a very likely that we will be releasing a gaming component within our game universe, which will COVID specifically.
This is a gamification component of that. Yes, perfect. This question of inclusion, diversity, NEOM today is based in Saudi Arabia. And we know that the kingdom has a plan about the vision 2030 in the future. Or you think that the blockchain technologies or the video game industry can go so far or learn or improve this region for your background of knowledge about the MENA region?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think what NEOM is trying to achieve is phenomenal, particularly in the gaming space. So there are lots of ways that people in Saudi Arabia can get involved with our project directly. So firstly, you know, with our Start Engine campaign, we are giving people an opportunity to buy into and own a stake of Metaiye Media. So
interesting.
To startengine.com/Metaiye Nights, or if you just go to startengine.com and look for Metaiye Nights, you'll find our page there, and people from all over the world are welcome to buy in to our company and own a piece, not only own as a customer, as a consumer, own their comics and own, you know, their wallet, but they can actually own a piece of the company as well. So we welcome that, but also we're building out the team as well. And I'm very keen to actually, you know, like I say, you know, our production team is very decentralized. You know, we work between the US, Europe, and Africa, and we'd love to bring in developers and creatives as part of our team from the Saudi region specifically as well. So people can reach out to us. You can reach out to me directly, Dele@metame.com, or you can reach out to us through Start Engine as well. You can find, we've got pretty ubiquitous footprint online, but you can either go to metame.com and you'll find out all the information about all of our contact details there. And if people and we're going to start running competitions. As an example, with our motion comic series, we're starting to look for people to do voiceovers. So you said about translating to Arabic. We'd love to find some people that could work with us to do translations of the comics, both in the written form and spoken form, into Arabic, so that we can get more involvement, more inclusion, build our movement across the region.
Perfect, perfect. I think that the message is clear. The message is clear on your vision, including the MENA region and specifically Saudi Arabia in your development. I think that is a great way to show that you care about the human purpose of this project. So far, thanks again, Dele Atanda, for this rich presentation. And I will back the link to our team from the ETP Gaming Live for the next session. Thank you a lot. Bye-bye, everybody.